On the evening of March 8, 2020, Brittany Way Lockie, a 16-year-old high school student from a small rural town in Nevada, suddenly disappeared. She left the youth center after band rehearsal and was never seen again. Within hours, phone calls started pouring in. Panic spread. Search efforts began. But beneath what seemed like an ordinary Sunday, something far more sinister was developing. Every step Britney took, every message she sent, and every movement shown on Snap Map would soon fall under an overwhelming level of scrutiny. What started as a troubling disappearance soon became one of the most shocking cases in Elko County's history. It wasn't just that it unfolded unseen in the desert. What was far more disturbing was who she was with and what happened to her in her final moments. Gabrielle Brittany Louis Larkey was born on June 4, 2003, in Colorado. Her birth certificate recorded her name as Gabrielle Lynn, but from a young age she chose to be called Britney. According to her family, this was entirely her decision, a way of shaping her own identity. In 2010, the family relocated to Spring Creek in Elko County, Nevada, due to work. Her father, James Wheelock, had accepted a position with a gold mining company. Her mother, Alicia, devoted herself to raising the children and maintaining stability at home. Although her parents later divorced, they continued to work together for Britney's well-being and for her younger brother, James, staying involved in her life while keeping their relationship neutral and conflict-free. From an early age, she was drawn to the outdoors, with horses and animal care becoming central to her daily life. By the age of 9, she was already riding her horse among herds, displaying skills that were traditional in the region. For someone so young, however, trainers and neighbors noted her confidence in the saddle and her independence. Britney competed in youth rodeos and even earned the symbolic title of Rodeo Queen, a role in her community that suggested strong promise for her future. Her interests, however, extended beyond ranch life. In talks with friends, Britney shared her hopes for the future, weighing two very different paths: joining the Navy with plans to work in psychological support, or pursuing a career as a special effects makeup artist. This contrast reflected how open she was to multiple possibilities at once. Adolescence, however, became a challenging period. At school, Britney was subjected to aggressive behavior from her peers. From the age of 14, patterns of sustained pressure began to surface. According to her mother, Britney often returned home after school feeling depressed, became socially withdrawn, and slowly lost the motivation to attend classes. The family chose to step away from traditional schooling and arranged for homeschooling. With official approval from the school district, Britney also began working at a local ranch alongside her studies. She was responsible for caring for animals, cleaning pastures, and managing basic maintenance duties. Her employer frequently praised her reliability and discipline, noting that she required no reminders or supervision. Her work in agriculture blended naturally with her responsibilities at home and the time she spent with her father. James was her closest confidant. They practiced music together, discussed future plans, and he was the first to sense that something was wrong. On the day Britney disappeared, this was the image she represented: independent, hardworking, and deeply connected to local traditions, yet looking far beyond the boundaries of her small hometown. Up until the spring of 2020, Britney's life appeared to be the beginning of a teenager's path, with major choices still ahead. Spring Creek is a small community in northeastern Nevada, located in Elko County. The town was established in the 1970s as a residential community for gold mine workers, and that economic base has largely remained the same. Many families still depend on mining jobs from nearby sites. The area combines suburban and rural elements, with paved roads, gas stations, and grocery stores existing alongside open pastures and private ranches. The population sits at just over 20,000, and most residents know one another by name. The traditions of the American West are deeply embedded in the local culture. Rodeo, cowboy hats, and working with livestock are not merely symbolic. They are integral to everyday life for teenagers. Horseback riding and rodeo participation often play a role in shaping social status. The region has a low crime rate. Bryce Edward Dicki was born and raised in the same county as Brittany Lockie. He was involved in the Spring Creek youth scene, competed in rodeo, and regularly attended school events. He had known the Lockie family since his early teenage years. Locals regarded him as one of their own, and to Brittany's parents, he was someone they felt they could trust. The bond between Bryce and Brittany developed over many years. They met as children and remained in steady contact. He was 2 years older and often viewed as a protector, particularly within the rodeo community where teenagers spent long hours together. Brittany's parents not only approved of the friendship, they actively encouraged it. Bryce was seen as mature and reliable. He spent a lot of time at their home, shared meals with the family, helped with chores, and was one of the few people they trusted to look after their daughter. Among other teens, Bryce carried a strong reputation. He was confident, skilled with horses, and knew how to present himself in public. He had the look and charm that appealed to people in the rural South. He was well-liked, but as he grew older, certain behavioral patterns began to emerge, patterns that went unnoticed for far too long. One of the earliest warning signs appeared in his romantic relationships. During the trial, a former girlfriend testified that Bryce had crossed serious boundaries. She testified that during private encounters, he used choking techniques without her consent. Her requests for him to stop were ignored, and the incidents occurred at least 4 times. One of these took place on the same day as a candlelight vigil for Brittany, a detail that added a deeply disturbing dimension to the case. Despite what he knew, Bryce remained highly visible in the days following Brittany's disappearance. He participated in public searches, reposted missing person alerts, and expressed sympathy online, presenting himself as a grieving friend. For many, it was a shock when the truth began to surface. Bryce wasn't just connected to Brittany, he played a role in her fate. Throughout the investigation, he maintained a confident demeanor, sticking firmly to a fabricated version of events. But detectives noticed early signs of inconsistency. His emotional reactions didn't match the seriousness of the situation, even as evidence began to challenge his account. He showed no panic or remorse. At trial, the defense tried to depict Bryce as a young man caught in circumstances beyond his control, but a combination of digital traces and circumstantial evidence quickly dismantled that story. Sunday afternoon, March 8, 2020, began like any other. Brittany joined her father, James, at the Spring Creek Community Center for one of his music rehearsals, a routine they both enjoyed. He played while she supported him as he worked on the sound equipment. Brittany sat in the hall, scrolling through her phone and chatting on Snapchat. At exactly 3:30 p.m., she turned to her dad and said, "Bryce is coming to pick me up. I'll be back soon." That was all she said. No further explanation. According to James, she left in good spirits. A familiar blue pickup truck waited outside, with Bryce Dicki behind the wheel. Brittany waved goodbye, got in, and the truck drove off. It was the last time her family saw her. Later, Bryce claimed they hadn't been together long and said he dropped Brittany near the school parking lot, where she was supposedly meeting someone else. When pressed for details, his account grew vague. He mentioned a stranger in a cowboy hat driving a green vehicle with decals, someone he couldn't name or describe further. Investigators were skeptical from the start. It was Sunday. No school, no activity on campus. The area was empty with no cameras or security personnel. Yet he claimed he had left a longtime friend alone with a man he couldn't identify. Something felt off. By evening, Brittany's family grew worried. She still hadn't returned home. Her phone, usually always on and reachable, was going straight to voicemail. That was unlike her. Brittany was known for keeping in touch and responding quickly. The family's first step was to contact Bryce. He told them he had dropped Brittany near a school parking lot, where she said she was meeting a new friend. According to Bryce, she walked toward another car with decals, but he didn't wait to see her get in. He didn't speak to the driver and didn't know who they were. He simply drove off. That explanation raised more questions than it answered. In a small, tight-knit town like Spring Creek, a car with noticeable stickers would have stood out. Yet no one else had seen the car, only Bryce. In the first 24 hours, investigators treated his statement as a tentative timeline, since he was the last confirmed person to see Brittany. Even so, something felt wrong. The mention of a mysterious third person with no identity or description made Bryce's account seem more like a placeholder than the truth. There was roughly a 2-hour gap between the moment Brittany got into Bryce's truck and the first failed call to her phone. Around 5:30 p.m., her cell either died or was turned off manually. Up to that point, there had been no signs of trouble. That evening, March 8, 2020, Brittany's family took action themselves, calling friends, checking messages, and trying to figure out where she might have gone. Nothing made sense. Later that night, close family friends began sharing her photo on Facebook and Snapchat, asking anyone who had seen her after 3:30 p.m. to come forward. The following morning, March 9th, an official missing person report was filed with the Elko County Sheriff's Office. Local authorities acted quickly, organizing multiple search teams that included volunteers, rodeo friends, neighbors, and local families. Flyers were posted at grocery stores, gas stations, and pharmacies. Posters with Brittany's image appeared throughout Spring Creek and nearby towns like Elko and Carlin. Meanwhile, social media erupted. Posts about her disappearance were shared hundreds of times within hours. Classmates, rodeo teammates, and neighbors all worked to spread the word. Yet despite the expanding outreach, no credible leads emerged. Then the case took a sudden and unsettling turn. Brittany's parents began receiving anonymous messages demanding $25,000 for her safe return. The messages contained threats and references to chemical substances, claiming she was being held somewhere. Cybercrime experts traced the texts to a prepaid number registered with false information. Although the sender couldn't be identified, investigators determined it was likely an extortion attempt aimed at exploiting the family's emotions for money. The sheriff's office advised the family not to respond, warning that any engagement could worsen the situation. The extortion was recorded as a separate criminal offense and, for the time being, wasn't considered directly connected to Brittany's disappearance. By now, nearly 48 hours had passed since she was last seen, and as the silence continued, pressure and panic only intensified, with no concrete leads. Rumors began to spread. Theories appeared on community boards and circulated in private chats. The sheriff's department urged the public to avoid speculation to prevent interfering with the investigation. Despite limited information, search efforts continued relentlessly. Locals combed remote areas, desert fields, backroads, and dry creek beds, with some even using personal drones. At the same time, authorities worked with phone providers to trace the last known GPS location of Brittany's device. By the evening of March 10th, there were still no answers, and the circumstances of her disappearance raised more questions than they resolved. Bryce remained the last confirmed person to see her. Given all the evidence investigators had gathered, the idea that Brittany had simply run away or been delayed was no longer considered plausible. On the morning of March 11, 2022, locals driving along a rural back road in the Barnard Basin area noticed something unusual: dark, dried stains in the sand. The location was about 18 miles from central Spring Creek, in a nearly deserted area. Nearby, they saw a blue construction tarp partially weighed down with rocks. When deputies from the Elko County Sheriff's Office arrived, they carefully lifted the tarp and discovered the body of a young woman beneath it. A quick visual check and personal belongings allowed for near-instant identification. The body was confirmed as Brittany Lockie, aided by a small keychain with her name found beside her. The scene suggested a violent death. Her body lay face down, her clothing partially torn, with clear signs of manual strangulation around her neck. A deep puncture wound on the right side of her neck had severed a major artery. The medical examiner later concluded that the injury, which caused rapid blood loss, was the primary cause of death, though asphyxiation also contributed. The official report listed her cause of death as a combination of asphyxia and massive blood loss. Evidence of a violent assault was also present, with injuries and biological traces on her inner thighs and pelvis supporting this finding. Near the body, investigators recovered Brittany's white earbuds tangled in a bush a few yards away. The way they were caught on the branches suggested she had been moved or had moved through that grassy area. Officers also found a torn condom wrapper and a used condom, both containing biological material, prompting immediate DNA testing. About a third of a mile from the scene, search teams located her cell phone. The screen was shattered and the casing crushed, clear signs that someone had attempted to destroy the device, likely to erase call history, location data, and messages. Even so, forensic teams managed to recover partial data from the SIM card and internal memory. This digital evidence would prove crucial in the days that followed. Experts confirmed that Britney had been active on Snapchat late in the afternoon of March 8th, just before her phone stopped transmitting a signal. The scene also offered physical clues about what had occurred. Gravel and sand showed drag marks, indicating her body had been moved after she was unconscious or deceased. Scratches on the ground, torn fragments of fabric matching her clothing, and small blood spatters in nearby brush all suggested a struggle. Microscopic particles found beneath Britney's fingernails were later confirmed through analysis to contain foreign biological material. These samples were immediately sent for comparison against the suspect DNA database. The discovery of her body completely changed the course of the case. What had been a missing person investigation was now officially classified as a homicide. Until then, there had been no concrete evidence of violence. Now investigators had a body, physical evidence, DNA samples, and a defined crime scene. The Barnard Basin area where Britney's body was found is remote and rugged, not a place people pass through casually. There are no nearby homes, almost no traffic, and little chance of random witnesses. That level of isolation likely allowed the crime to occur without immediate discovery. The terrain is covered in brush and intersected by dusty roads with no lighting, security cameras, or infrastructure. News of the body's discovery was tightly controlled. The sheriff's department issued a brief public statement confirming that remains had been found but provided no additional details. This approach aimed to protect the integrity of the investigation, as DNA testing was still ongoing and key evidence was being processed. That same evening, Britney's family was formally notified, with officers and crisis counselors present to offer support. The reaction was devastating: shock, disbelief, and grief. While word of Britney's death spread through the town, very few knew the specifics of how or where she had been found. With the homicide officially confirmed, the investigation intensified. The initial focus turned to Britney's personal life, examining any conflicts or unstable relationships that could indicate a possible motive. One of the first people questioned was her ex-boyfriend. Their relationship had ended long before Britney disappeared, but friends described it as tense. Reports indicated he continued messaging her after the breakup, and some of those messages were concerning. Britney's brother also recalled a chilling remark: "One day they're going to find you dead in the desert." Investigators treated that comment as a potential threat. They reviewed text logs, social media messages, and witness statements but found no direct connection between the threat and Britney's death. His phone records, work schedule, and surveillance footage confirmed he was elsewhere on the day she went missing. Ultimately, he had a solid alibi and was cleared of suspicion. The next lead involved an unknown contact appearing in Britney's Snapchat messages under the alias JT. The name appeared multiple times in chats in the days before her disappearance. A few of her friends mentioned the name during interviews, with one noting that Britney had described JT as someone she was just beginning to get to know. Police began checking every possible match in the county, looking at initials, usernames, and Snapchat-linked profiles. Several young men were interviewed, either because their initials matched or they had potential connections to Britney. One, who drove a green pickup similar to the one Bryce had mentioned, initially drew attention, but his alibi held. Cell tower data, surveillance footage, and witness statements all confirmed he was in another town at the time. Britney vanished as each of these potential leads was eliminated. Investigators began to question the entire narrative. Bryce's story about a mysterious stranger in a green truck started to seem less like a real person and more like a detail intended to mislead the investigation. Even so, there wasn't enough solid evidence at that point to charge Bryce, and police continued exploring other possibilities. Officers checked every registered green vehicle in the area, agricultural trucks, private SUVs, and ranch vehicles, but found no matches. They also considered other scenarios, including the chance that a random outsider had committed the crime. Events like rodeos, livestock fairs, and local exhibitions often drew crowds from neighboring areas, including seasonal workers, visitors, and competitive riders. But there was no concrete evidence suggesting an outside perpetrator. Another possibility considered was that Britney might have left voluntarily with someone she barely knew, without informing her family. This theory was strongly rejected by those closest to her. According to her loved ones, Britney wasn't the type to make impulsive decisions or go off with strangers. The process of elimination continued for days. Each false lead had to be fully verified and documented before being dismissed, and the investigation faced additional challenges. The local sheriff's department had limited resources and lacked immediate access to a wide range of forensic experts. Some tests had to be conducted by specialists from neighboring counties or sent to the state lab, which extended the timeline for several weeks following Brittany Wilkie's death. The investigation stalled after exhausting every dead end, prompting detectives to return their focus to Bryce Dicki. This time, attention shifted from mysterious suspects to digital forensics directly linked to him. The first major inconsistency in his story emerged from SnapMap, Snapchat's location-sharing feature. Data obtained by law enforcement showed that at the exact moment Britney's phone went dark, her device and Bryce's phone were pinging from the same location in the Barnard Basin Desert. This directly contradicted Bryce's original statement. Even more revealing was a selfie found on his phone, taken in the same desert area where Britney's body was later found. Metadata confirmed the image had been captured on the very day she disappeared. Bryce had insisted he never left town that day, making the photo highly incriminating. But the final piece that completely dismantled his account was the DNA match. Genetic material collected from the scene was compared to a sample taken from Bryce under a court order, and the results confirmed a match. Contact between him and Britney had occurred on the day she disappeared. Additional evidence included scratches on Bryce's body, documented just one day after Britney's death. He claimed the injuries came from working with horses, but the marks didn't match that explanation. The scratches were parallel and jagged, consistent with fingernail marks. Forensic testing revealed biological traces beneath his skin that matched Brittany Wilkie's DNA. Meanwhile, the green truck theory was officially ruled out, as no vehicle fitting that description appeared on local traffic cameras. No witnesses reported seeing such a vehicle in the area either. Investigators also recovered deleted Snapchat messages from Bryce's phone with the company's assistance. Law enforcement was able to restore fragments of these conversations, which showed that Bryce had pressured Britney to meet him that day, even after she expressed hesitation. The messages made it clear that their encounter was neither spontaneous nor casual. Once all this evidence was compiled, police brought Bryce in for a second round of questioning. This time, his story began to unravel. His new account didn't match his earlier statements. He couldn't explain why he had been in the desert where Britney's body was found or why his DNA was on her. He hesitated frequently, changed his phrasing, and tried to divert the conversation. By that point, investigators no longer considered him a witness. They saw him as the prime suspect. The trial for Brittany Way Lockie's murder began in March 2022. Bryce Dicki, the defendant, was charged with first-degree murder and assault with intent. From the outset, the case attracted intense public attention, with the courtroom packed every day. Journalists, community members, and Britney's family were all in attendance. The prosecution's case relied on several key pieces of evidence. DNA analysis placed Bryce at the scene. Medical experts testified about physical trauma, including injuries consistent with strangulation and multiple stab wounds, and digital forensics played a critical role. The collection of electronic data helped jurors reconstruct the timeline and understand the full truth. The defense attempted to challenge the evidence's validity. Bryce's attorneys argued that the encounter had been consensual and claimed that someone else had caused Britney's death. They questioned the reliability of the data, suggesting it could have been tampered with. Forensic experts, however, refuted these claims, verifying the authenticity of the digital files and confirming that proper chain of custody procedures had been followed. After days of testimony, cross-examinations, and expert analysis, the jury began deliberations. It took them less than 24 hours. In March 2022, nearly 2 years after Britney disappeared, the verdict was announced. guilty on all counts. Bryce Dicki was convicted of first-degree murder and assault with intent and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 46 years. The courtroom grew silent as the verdict was announced. It was a moment of closure, though not of peace. Brittany's parents were present, and her mother gave a brief statement. Her voice was calm but heavy with grief and disappointment. She said that no verdict could ever replace her daughter, but she hoped it would serve as a warning. Trust should never be given blindly, especially in a town like Spring Creek, where everyone knows one another. Bryce wasn't just another defendant. He was part of the community's fabric. The reaction was intense, and the sense of betrayal ran deep. Even among those who barely knew the Wilkie family, former friends and classmates of Bryce expressed their shock publicly. They remembered him as quiet, polite, and even kind, but his role in such a brutal crime shattered any illusion that appearances reflect true character. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.